What's going on, everybody?
It's Jesus Ween time.
It is
right.
Jesus Ween time.
I'm feeling a little bit reverent.
I'm mainly rebellious tonight.
Yeah. We are going to get a little bit rebellious tonight.
Y'all, like I said, y'all have no idea how excited I am to get into this stuff.
We are definitely reverent and rebellious tonight. For
I
sure.
was so excited. I watched the new Dracula movie, the
Last Voyage.
Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Yeah.
I watched it last night.
So if you haven't got a clue what we're going to do today, we actually it's the month of October.
Yes.
Yep.
So we have we're going to dig into, we're going to do a whole Halloween series.
Yeah.
The holiest of months.
That's exactly right.
2 holes tonight.
Yeah.
That's it. And so we're just gonna take head on some of these subjects and see how they, or if they, relate to the Bible or to Christianity in any way. Whether we should be terrified, whether we should ban these things from our existence, or all this. And so today's subject is vampires.
That's right.
All right.
Vampires. Now, you would not normally ever associate vampires with scripture or the Bible or even religion.
Sure you do.
But we're gonna, we have to ask the question, lots of questions. And so, we, especially in this modern time, I would say especially the last 30 years, we've just seen vampires everywhere in media, in books, in movies, and miniseries, all this stuff. What is the fascination with vampires?
I think it's their diaries.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, your dad joke. What's your dad joke tonight?
Wait.
What?
Before, we got to tell you guys, don't be vampires and only take from us. Hit that like button.
That's right.
Hit subscribe. If you're listening, leave us a rating and a review and share it with your friends. Like I said, don't be a vampire and only take. Give some. Share it out a little bit. Now, what's your dad joke?
What do you call a fat psychic?
A large.
A 4-chin teller.
Okay.
Thank you.
Respect.
Yep. All right.
you.
All right. Good.
That kind of goes with our theme, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Divination.
Okay. So before we get into the vampires in culture, what the heck is a vampire?
It's a bloodsucker, man. It's well, I'm gonna have the Hollywood approach here, and it's the the undead, living undead.
Okay.
I mean,
when you think vampire, which actor pops in your mind?
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman. Okay.
Yeah.
Bram
That's a good one.
Stoker's.
Yep.
Yeah.
This was my question. All right, I'll ask you and then we'll go. All right.
Okay.
What is the best vampire movie out there?
Buffy.
Twilight.
Or what is your go-to? Like, if you had to really pick your, all right, this is my go-to vampire movie, which one are you picking?
I don't know that I've ever seen a vampire movie.
What, any?
I don't think I have.
Oh, man.
I just, scary movies scare me. So
I know you're not a horror guy, but I figured you've seen one.
them.
Not even like Fright Night?
No.
Lost Boys.
No.
Wow.
No.
Man.
No.
I am sad for you right now.
So I'm
You're the true Christian.
I'm
here.
You're
unstained
innocent.
by the world.
Yeah, you're the innocent one.
That's exactly right. So you guys are going to teach me a lot about vampires, but I did some digging too. I did some research, and it's fascinating, really.
It is.
Okay, so we got this undead.
What is Pat's?
What?
I got to know what Pat's is.
30 Days of Night.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
30 Days of Night.
And what's yours?
Dracula, but the
Classic.
Keanu Reeves one. I like
Okay.
the who is that? Not Scorsese. Coppola.
Yeah.
The Coppola
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
That's mine. I've read the book 4 times.
Really?
You know how a lot
Yeah.
of people watch like Miracle 34th Street and all that on Christmas?
Yeah.
I watch the old school Dracula on Halloween.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm
it's classic
pretty much
for
with
me.
you.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
classic.
Our friends on the Voxology podcast, Tim Stafford, who is one of the hosts, his favorite holiday, hands down, is Halloween. He goes nuts for Halloween more than he does for Christmas.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. He's just all about. He painted his house black.
Nice.
Wow, that is awesome.
Respect.
I know.
Yeah.
Hey, when's that podcast come out about the horror movies? the Christian. I want to listen to that.
It's going to be a couple of weeks, I think, but it's called Be Afraid.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I keep checking back on all of this.
We'll let you know. It's got to come out this month, right?
I feel like they're letting us down if they don't. Well, we're going to have to remedy your lack of vampire films.
I think I could probably handle a vampire
Peter's
movie.
going to be calling us at 4 a.m. I can't sleep. Why did you do this to me?
Yeah, I see the trailers and I just go hide under a pillow. It's like, nah, I don't think so. So tell me about the fascination with vampires. Why are people so nuts about them?
I think it's the supernatural. The supernatural aspects for most people intrigue people, and I don't care if it's superheroes or if it's anything that's supernatural. Usually piques people's interest.
So we got an undead human, right? Who, but actually you can make them dead, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So and they suck other people's blood by biting them in the neck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, see, I think part of the allure to vampires is because, I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, they basically can get anything they want.
Yeah.
Like
Except the tan.
Except a tan. But they, when it comes to romance, I mean, that's in Dracula and the movies, all of the time. I mean, they have a kind of a sexual lure that they can pretty much.
I was just going to say that I put a big correlation with that as we were studying for this.
Yeah.
The romanticization, if that's the word it is now.
Close enough.
Of the vampire. It started at the turn of the century with, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
And then we started getting these films, right? This dark, pale guy in dark, shadowy places biting on people's neck. Why's it got to be the neck, right?
I know.
Why can't they bite them in the bicep?
Yeah.
Because that's not sexy.
Because that's where the good vein is. Though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
yeah. Okay. So I read this quote, and this was from late 1800s, early 1900s, and it said, "Vampires stir terror in the hearts of men and stir desire in the hearts of women."
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, but why would there be desire for some undead human to bite you in the neck? Where did that come from?
I've never really known why they have that ability, but again, that's how
I was the guy rooting for Van Helsing. I was the vampire hunter side. Like Blade was my jam.
Okay.
Blade is good. Blade is good.
Okay. Is this isn't the place where we use the word Riz, right?
Yeah, he would be.
Maybe
it is.
Maybe it is.
What is the proper word? Riz Lord?
Yeah,
Riz
like
Lord.
that. Yeah.
Or Riz King? What is it? Riz Lord?
It's one of them
one of the
high
other.
officials.
I'm not.
So it all started, the modernization, popularization of vampires started with the classic novels, right? Mm-hmm. So we have John Polidori wrote a book called The Vampire with a Y.
Vampire.
Yes, in 1819. What the heck was going on in 1890? I mean, it's like, and then in 1897,
My boy.
yeah, about 80 years later, Bram Stoker wrote the classic Dracula. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my question is, well, two questions. Why were they fascinated with this vampire character?
I don't know. I've wondered that myself, which I went back and was kind of researching a little bit of this on, the original vampire, which he kind of definitely Bram Stoker. I haven't read the John Polidori one.
Yeah.
But I know with Bram Stoker, he really did a lot of imagination work on that, and he based it loosely off of, like we talked about off air, Vlad the Impaler, which you can research all about that guy. But there was one of the things that I noticed about original vampires, the early on vampires, there was no like sexual aspect. It actually was, a lot of them were trying to explain diseases, and it was
Really?
like in Romania, some of those countries like that. I mean, I'm talking back in like in the Middle Ages, they truly believed in vampires, because they even talked about, and this it's kind of gross, but they would say when these people would die, their body would release basically a purge, and it would turn the fluids like blood looking, and they would think it was blood, but it wasn't blood. And so there was a famous story, and I can't pronounce the guy's name right. It's like Pedrioria or something.
How about?
But yeah, but he several people got killed or died in this town, this village, and they all claimed in their dying moment that it was this guy who had actually been dead like several days prior. So they were saying that it was him and he's a vampire. So they went and they dug it up, got him out, and he had this purge, and they were like, it's blood. And so they said he's been drinking the blood. So I'm pretty sure they cut his head off and staked him in the heart. They gave him a vampire, and it got so much so that it actually became legal. They had actual, basically deputized vampire hunters.
Yep.
And it was legal for you to dig up the body, cut the head off, stake them in the heart if you presume them to be vampires.
And I think we did some of the same research then, because they would dig these people up, and when you go in there and your body does this purge, your fingernails, your fingernail beds, they retract.
Yeah.
And the same thing with all the fluids drain from your body, so it looks like your hair's still growing, it looks like your nails are growing, and they think these people are still alive.
Yeah.
So this is where we get the term undead.
Well, and I also read that, oftentimes in these ancient periods, when they would bury somebody, there was often not a casket, and the graves weren't very deep.
Right.
And as the body decomposed, the gases would release. And there would be sounds.
Yeah.
And so you'd be walking across somebody's grave and you'd hear all these creepy sounds. Yeah. And you're going like, that person's not dead.
Yeah.
I just got the Michael Jackson Thriller music video on my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's another cool thing too. What?
It was Siri.
Okay. Bless you. The name Drackle.
That's where he got that, right?
Yep. And so Drackle, it means, it depends on what language you're reading.
Okay.
Because you got the Wallachian or you have the Romanian. And the Wallachian is devil. Romanian is dragon. So they're both son of the devil, son of Dracula is son of the devil or son of the dragon.
I got you.
And so there's even in the name alone, it's a very big connection to the satanic.
Well, and that was one of the things they pointed out with Dracula. It has it actually brings in God to where he curses it, when his woman is dead at the beginning, and he kind of curses it, and he then gets that curse placed upon him from God. They said the vampire or whatever does not have any sort of spiritual element, in terms of God, because they were like, it's really kind of bizarre that there's not that tie in that one.
Well,
in Dracula 2000, they made Dracula out to be Judas.
Yeah, I've heard that connection before.
Because when the sun rose on Judas, his body spilled out. The silver that he sold Jesus for is the silver that killed him. That's why he hates all things Christian. Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that.
It's a far fetch.
For sure, for sure. That's not. That's in 4th John, I think.
Which vampires is 4th John. Vampires is not far fetched.
No, it's not. In fact,
vampirism isn't. How about that?
There you go.
Vampirism.
That is true. The vampires that we see in our media today are a little far-fetched.
Yeah.
And okay, so
I was being sarcastic though,
but here's the thing: if we go all the way back, I did some cultural studies, and it is true that all over the world, like in Asian cultures, it wasn't just European, but it was Middle Eastern, and almost every culture has some sort of creature or spirit being that drains life force out of people.
Yep.
And most often it's blood, because that's kind of the most logic go-to kind of thing, because blood is life. Every culture, even ancient cultures, understand that. But
it's usually blood or breath
or flesh. Yes,
yep.
Eat flesh. So, this doctor who Michael Heiser was interviewing, very smart guy, and he did a lot of research, and he actually went back and found connections to the ancient Mesopotamian system, which is where the giants and the Elohim and all of those things, that's the whole culture they came out of. And so he made a connection in once again going back to the book of Enoch.
Okay.
So he's talking about how the Elohim and the giants that were the product of the Elohim, they actually were cannibalistic. That they had this voracious appetites. They would eat hundreds of oxen and camels, and just like consume these every day. And they drained the resources out of the land. The people were starving and so then they began to eat the people.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you go to Enoch 15, around verse 11, it says, "And the spirits of the giant do wrong or corrupt, attack, fight, break on the earth, and cause sorrow. And they, and these spirits will rise against the sons of men and against the women, because they came out of them during the days of slaughter and destruction." So you kind of got that vibe going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a demonic connection there, because later on in Enoch 15, it will say that when the flood came, that it didn't destroy the spirits of the giants, that they were disembodied and wandering around looking for something or somebody to inhabit.
Mm-hmm.
And when they inhabited that somebody or something, then that cannibalistic, that voracious appetite, that whole thing sort of manifested itself.
Yep.
And so,
and we can definitely document throughout the course of time, even today, of cannibalism.
oh, sure. Yeah. Now, there are cultures today that eat human flesh and drink human blood.
That's right.
I mean, that's just their vibe.
And that's where I was getting at, that vampirism is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and that's the whole thing, is that these vampire types existed across the board in every culture.
Right.
Just like a creation narrative, just like a flood narrative, just like we've talked about before. And so the roots of vampirism have been around as long as time.
Yeah.
And by the time Polidori and Bram Stoker got a hold of this stuff, this is the research they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They read the Book of Enoch. They went back to the ancient Babylonian, Mesopotamian, even the ancient Asian cultures and Aztec cultures and all this stuff, and they just consumed this stuff and concocted these characters.
They Steven Spielberged it.
They sure did.
Yeah.
They absolutely did. So there is a connection there.
Yeah.
And I found it fascinating because if you look in Scripture,
All right, here we go.
there's some very, very interesting things. Okay, so in Proverbs, I got to get to Proverbs. Proverbs
30.
30. Yeah, Proverbs 30. I had it marked, but I lost it. Proverbs 30, 14 and 15.
Yep.
Okay, listen to what it says. "There is a kind of man whose teeth are like swords, and his jaw teeth like knives, to devour the afflicted from the earth and the needy from among men." Now, here's where it gets very interesting. The leech.
The what?
Leech.
With pointy teeth.
Leech. It actually, it is, I can't remember the exact interpretation of that, but there is something behind it, something spiritual behind it. Anyway, it says, the leech has two daughters, give and give. There are three things that will not be satisfied, four that will not say enough. So what do you think about that?
Well, it sounds very vampire-y to me. A man with sharp, pointy teeth, and he's like a leech.
Yeah. I'm going to look up the exact translation of that.
Horse
of
leech.
that word. Yeah. But it goes a little bit deeper than that. I'm going to find it. Anyway, you guys can, talk amongst yourselves.
Well, that's,
Strong says it's a vampire-like demon.
Yes.
there you go.
Yes. A vampire-like demon.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's what, couldn't we say pretty safely that demons, they could essentially shape shift?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. When that starts to happen. It's fascinating in the history. Yeah, Aluka, that it is a vampire-like demon. Yeah.
So for people wondering, what is the context of this verse? Like, what's going on in this?
He's talking about, these are the words of Agur. I don't know who
He's a
Agur
good
is.
guy. Yeah.
Apparently, he's the son of Jakeh, the oracle. The man declares to Ithiel and Ukal. And it's kind of an odd chapter. I've read this chapter before. It starts,
I love his verse 2.
I know.
Surely I am more stupid than any man.
and I do not have the understanding of a man. Neither have I learned wisdom, nor do I have knowledge of the Holy One. What's this doing in the Bible anyway? But he's basically saying, there's no man that can equal the knowledge of God.
Yeah.
Right.
We can never know God. And he goes on to say there's a kind of man who curses his father, does not bless his mother. There's a kind who is pure in his own eyes, yet is not washed from his filthiness. I don't know anybody like that.
At all.
There is a kind, oh, how lofty are his eyes, and his eyelids are raised in arrogance. And then it says, there is a kind of man whose teeth are like swords, his jaw teeth like knives, to devour the afflicted from the earth, the needy from among men.
So do you think he is actually describing someone, or is this
it's
a metaphor?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it very well could be. It could be that he is describing a person who presents like the vampire demon creature. You know what I'm saying? Like if I said, when Jesus said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," he calls him Satan.
Yeah.
But he wasn't Satan.
Yeah.
But he was acting like it at the moment.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like a guy that walks into the room and he's just negative and sucks the life out of the room.
Right.
I'm like, that could be a vampire.
Well, I like what he says here. He says, the 2 daughters give. There are 3 things that will not satisfy, 4 that will not say enough. And then that next verse, Sheol, the barren womb.
There you go.
Earth is never satisfied with water, and fire that never says enough.
Yeah.
Can we say that's today?
Oh, yeah, and that also is a metaphor for basically the place of the dead, the netherworld.
Mm-hmm.
His appetite is never satisfied.
That's right.
Always wants more people in the place of the dead.
That's right.
And so on one hand, we could say, well, of course, people die all the time.
Yeah.
There's never a shortage of people dying. But also, he's getting at this kind of appetite, like there's something pulling you to the netherworld.
Yeah.
And that's kind of creepy.
It is. It is. I will make a side note on this. When I was kind of looking up stuff on this, it was kind of funny. One of the things I found, it was a YouTube channel, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was obviously like I guess a Christian channel, but it was talking about the origin of vampires. And like right in the middle of it, they start talking about vampires, and then right in the middle, it's like basically tells you should not watch films about vampires. You should not read about vampires because you are inviting the evil in whenever you do these things.
Yeah.
So when you read about demons in scripture, are you doing that?
I guess they would say you are. I guess you should skim over those verses.
How do you feel about that, though?
I mean, look, I'll tell you what has been a change of mine. When I was a teenager, I always wanted to see a ghost. I was like, man, if they're real, I want to see one. And so like I'd go, there's a little, sounds weird saying, but there's a baby cemetery down here where you get creeped out driving. There is a cemetery from like the 1800s.
What?
Of like babies.
Well, it's no wonder I get creeped out driving down. I feel like the headless horseman going down that way. Lord.
We would go in there. Me and some buddies would walk around there because you like almost stumble over these old headstones. You can't hardly read them. And it's just creepy. But I used to say I wanted to experience, like I wanted to see one. But then the more I've learned about this stuff, it's like really and truthfully, you probably shouldn't go looking because if you go looking, I mean, these evil spirits, I'm not saying I'll walk up to Dracula in the woods, but is there a chance if I go seeking out an evil spirit, even though I'm saying like a ghost, if I find one, it's probably a demon. And it's you probably shouldn't go looking.
No. I would say if you're watching a horror film, are you idolizing it? Are you pursuing demonic purposes? No. Because you can turn on the news and see plenty of demonic stuff.
Every day.
Yeah. And I've met Republican and Democrat demons in my life. You know what I mean?
But would you say that becoming obsessed with not necessarily the supernatural, because there's good and evil supernatural, but with the evil spirits or unclean spirits or vampires and all that kind of thing, would you say that could probably lead you into something else?
Yeah. I think it probably, I mean, you could probably get obsessed to the point where I mean, you in a way are kind of inviting that spirit in.
Well, that's what you're revolving your life around.
I remember people in my church when I was growing up, maybe even I'm not mom and dad. You would never do this. There were people in my church who would not let their kids watch Casper the Friendly Ghost.
What?
Really? I don't think I actually remember when Harry Potter came out.
Oh,
my mom did not want me watching that.
No,
Wizards.
You didn't want me watching Harry Potter.
That caused a big controversy.
Yeah, let's just rob children of all their childhood.
Hey, well, I got one for y'all. What are your thoughts on a Ouija board?
Oh my gosh.
Well,
I've never played one.
I've never messed with one.
Now, are you going to sit here and tell us you've never watched a vampire movie, but you've played with a Ouija board?
I have not played with the Ouija board.
I thought you were about to say.
No, but I will tell you that I did this. I read this in a book and I tried it, and it actually worked.
Uh-oh.
You could do this right now if you wanted to, and you can take a piece of string with like a big nut or bolt or just something with weight on it, and you can hold it up in the air like this, and you can ask it a yes or no question. And if it's yes, it'll swing back and forth. And if it's no, it'll go in a circle.
And it worked?
Every time.
Huh. Like accurately?
Yes.
Wow. What do you think that is?
Some weird voodoo magic 8-ball thing is what that is. I mean, it kind of freaked me out.
Everyone right now is looking at this.
I know. Keep your kids away from the nuts and bolts.
I'll use that come Super Bowl time. I'll be like, who will
no, it has to be. It kind of has to be something you already know the answer to. You know,
yeah.
I don't think it will predict anything.
Maybe your mind can move it.
Maybe it's sending out little.
So
vibes,
you tried it and it worked.
Yeah, and it freaked me out. I never did it again.
It sounds like that's don't they claim some possessions happen because of Ouija boards?
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, if you're like super serious about it, and I think that because you're opening up your consciousness.
Yeah.
You're opening it up to something other than anything godly.
Yeah.
And also too, if we're gonna go by Hollywood standard, we're all good because you got to be Catholic to be.
That is true.
In the movie, it always has to be a Catholic person.
Yeah.
Well, then transcendental meditation. I'm not trying to go down a way big rabbit hole here, but that one there, I've heard it. Couldn't you be potentially opening yourself there?
It depends on what your focus is. And the verse that says, the person's whose heart has been, the demons have been cast out and it's left open and clean, and then nothing fills the gap. Then the demon comes back and brings 7 more with them, and it's 7 times worse than it was. I just with things like that, it's almost kind of like, how far can I get to the line and still call myself a Christian?
Yeah,
and still be doing Christian things.
I'm gonna play the cheesy cop-out card. If you knock on the devil's door long enough, he'll answer.
I think that's true.
Well, and that's what I feel like with in regards to me, like I'm not going to cemeteries anymore. Like, man, I want to see a ghost.
Yeah, you might see one.
Yeah, I might see one, and then I'll be like, at this point in my life, I'm like, I don't know that that's a ghost, but I think it's a demon. I better get out of here.
Let me just say that if I encounter something, it is completely on accident. You know what I mean? It is completely on accident, and I'm gonna need some new pants.
Yeah.
So, because we know that every ancient culture had this vampire image, kind of a creature, spirit, something like that. Mm-hmm. We have to. One of the more prominent ones was Lilith.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Lilith for a minute. Lilith was, in some circles, was known as the Queen of Demons.
Yep.
Okay, so
I
Lilith,
believe she was also in Mesopotamian and Babylonian.
For sure. And Lilith was sort of identified with taking breath.
Yep.
So this doctor guy that was being interviewed talked about what we would call sudden infant death syndrome.
Yep.
Like go to bed, get up, your baby's not alive. That was Lilith. Came during the night and stole the breath away from the baby. Okay, so Isaiah 34, 14.
And we got to chew on this for a minute because it's a lot here.
There's a lot here. Okay, so it says Isaiah's prophesying about God's wrath against the nations.
What is it? 34?
34. Yeah.
Yeah. 34:14.
And so this is not a prophecy against Israel. It's
the nations.
This is how God's going to judge the nations.
And who are the nations ran by at this point?
Well, it's the empires. It's probably the Assyrians at this point.
But spiritually.
Oh well, yeah,
Elohim,
it's
right?
the Elohim. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so he says, he's talking about all, its nobles. There's no one there. Who will they proclaim as king? All its princes shall be nothing. Thorns shall come up in its fortified towers, nettles and thistles in its fortified cities. It shall also be a haunt of jackals and an abode of ostriches. They talk about jackals and ostriches all the time.
So we're getting a wildlife warning.
Yes, we actually are. And I actually watched this whole thing on the prophecy of Babylon, how it would not be inhabited anymore. And the guy did the original map of the walls of Babylon. And within that space, even though everything around it is occupied, there is nothing there. And he walked right through the middle, and it's really kind of desolate. And there are jackals everywhere.
Yeah.
Legit jackals. But he uses the image of jackals and ostriches because jackals are aggressive and they destroy. But ostriches are just stupid and neglectful. They are known to not feed their young.
Yeah.
And there's one passage that says even jackals nurse their young.
Yeah. And
What are you doing?
And jackals are also scavengers.
Yes,
they eat
absolutely.
dead things.
They eat flesh and blood and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we got that image going on. But then in verse 14, it says, and the desert creatures shall meet with the wolves.
Okay.
Or howling creatures. How about that?
So a werewolf.
Maybe.
Now this next phrase right here.
Okay. And the desert creatures shall meet with the wolves. The hairy goat also shall cry to its kind.
What is the hairy goat?
It is a
satyr.
Yes. And actually it would be a demon. A goat demon.
That word is satyr.
Satyr.
When I saw that, my jaw dropped.
I know. Yeah, so what's your understanding of a satyr?
In the movies when you always see the statue of the goat demon, that's what I picture in my head.
Yeah.
As soon as I see that, I'm like, that's where they got that imagery.
Yeah.
With the man body, but it's got the goat head.
Yeah.
Okay, but then here's the next line. It says,
gets better.
okay, so and the desert creatures shall meet with the wolves, the howling creatures. The demon goat, satyr, also shall cry to its kind. Yes, the night monster shall settle there.
What's the word for night monster?
Night monster is Lilith. It actually uses Lilith.
Yep.
By name, right there.
That ought to be a bumper sticker.
How do
That's a
we?
good church.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
need to put that on the church sign out there.
Yeah. It is. It is literally
The night monster.
Lilith, and it spells it kind of weird.
Yeah.
Liylyth. Lilith. Okay.
Augustine Clement. He said that it actually means Liliths. It's plural.
Yeah, I would say that is right, according to my concordance right here. And it says, name of a female night demon haunting desolate Edom, probably borrowed from Babylonian.
Yep.
Huh.
And you can look into Syriac, which is one of the apocryphal texts, on the development of the legends of Lilith in later Judaism. So, and it also can be translated a night specter or a screech owl.
Yep.
So she makes a terrible sound.
Apparently.
Well, in Isaiah 13, verse 21, it says, but desert creatures will lie down there, and their house will be full of owls, ostriches also will live there, and shaggy goats will frolic there.
Yeah.
That same group.
That same
Group.
Uh-huh.
So this isn't just like some one-off.
So this is what's going to happen to the nations. So do we think that vampirism, it has some root in reality? I think it does.
If you tie it to Lilith, who is a leech.
And to tie it to these night demons and these howling creatures, all of those things. Well, let's put it this way. All of these things were in Isaiah's sensibility.
Yeah.
He was aware of them.
Yep.
He identifies them as evil. And there is, I think, a connection between creatures like this and the Nephilim and the Anakim. Yep. They're disembodied spirits that were, you know.
Yeah. And I think also too, when we talk about vampires, right, everyone goes to the physical aspect of it, right? Like, are there really people out there latching down on people's necks, sucking blood? That's not what we're talking about. When we look what scripture says, what we've been talking about in church for the last month, right? It's spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
What is the spirit of this? Going behind here, and it says this controls the nations. Could we say that we have vampire-like
for sure
countries around the world?
Yeah, if you get into images and types and analogies, I mean,
it's galore.
Jackals, ostriches, howling creatures, leeches, absolutely, it's everywhere. Yeah. It's everywhere, and that's the kind of spirit world we're kind of moving around in.
Yeah.
So
you don't have to dodge counts from Romania.
No, you don't. Although there have been people who have had experiences like that. These have been documented.
That's very true.
Okay.
When we get to the series on aliens, we'll touch more on that. About
Pat
the experience.
has been abducted. Everybody,
I have.
just gonna give out.
Okay.
That it is. It's again, this is stuff. I'm like, man, how about? Because I've read Isaiah. I'm like, how did I skip over?
Because
the night monster of all things. That's such a cool name. I would have not skipped over the night monster.
But that's the thing too, is there was a concerted effort by Bible translators, even from the early Christian church. Now, you think about this, the first century church, that was, the apostles and everything.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the apostles began to die out, and then other church leaders took over. There was Jerome, and there was, all these guys, and they're writing theology, commentaries. They're translating scripture into Latin, and they're doing all this stuff. And they live in this weird, paganized world with all this goofy stuff going on. And every time I read this whole journal essay on this, and it was fascinating, but every time they get to one of these sort of trouble words, if it's possible to translate it as anything else, they'll choose that.
Yeah.
Because they don't want their ex-pagan, newly found believers to get the wrong idea.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I can understand that. I really can, which is why we're not uncovering any new truth. We didn't just get a new revelation. We're just, kind of seeing things through a different kind of lens that lets us know, it's like, because here we are, 2023, and there's all these, vampires, werewolves, zombies, ghouls, goblins, ghosts. It's like, where did this stuff come from? Yeah. Well, why does it exist?
And, Wiccans actually recognize Lilith.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Wiccans recognize Lilith as the first mother of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real thing for sure.
So are you saying though, like what you're getting at on that, on like them using night monster? Would that be because that's just literally what it is? There's no other way.
There's no real other way to translate
describe.
That.
Yeah,
because when you go to the concordance,
what are other versions? Let me go to God's version, the King James version.
There you go. There you go.
It calls it a satire there.
Yes.
Shall cry to his fellow.
Yeah.
So it's like a banshee scream is what I'm imagining.
Okay, so New International Version says, desert creatures will meet with hyenas, and the wild goats will bleat to each other. There the night creatures will also lie down and find for themselves places of rest. That's very tame.
Yeah. Have you heard this is the Message.
Okay.
It is absolutely nothing like that.
Do it.
What's it say?
I'm like, this is right. All right. Okay. Man, I've never read the Message. We talked about it last episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing this is where I'm at, because remember it says, so the whole country soaked with blood. It's all the ground greasy with fat. It's God's scheduled time for vengeance. The year all Zion's accounts are settled. Edom's streams will flow sluggish thick with pollution. The soil sterile, poisoned with waste. The whole country a smoking, stinking garbage dump. The fire's burning day and night. The sky's black with endless smoke. Generation after generation of wasteland. No more travelers through this country. All right, here kind of some owls. Vultures and skunks will police the streets, and owls and crows will feel at home there. God will reverse creation. Chaos.
Wow.
Preach that Sunday.
I
That
think
is
I
so
like
uplifting.
Night Monster sounds a lot better.
Kind of does.
Good Lord.
Man, what do you really mean, Eugene Peterson?
Yeah. God.
Where do you think we get this this idea that the blood and the flesh, that's what these creatures are desire?
I feel like it's because if I relate it to biblical aspect, I'd say because blood is life.
Yes.
And that's just kind of how that's where I've always gotten
I
it.
feel like it's a very big mocking toward anything holy.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, an attempted reversal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I heard one scholar say that, anything created by Satan is a counterfeit of something created by God.
Yeah.
You know, there's even the symbolism of 666, it's a counterfeit of 777.
Yeah.
You know, Satan's got the, unholy Trinity. God's got the Holy Trinity.
I think in Hebrew gematria, it's 333. 3 is the number of the Trinity, and 6 is the number of man.
There you go. I like that. Okay, so we should not neglect Leviticus before we get out of this.
Okay.
Because it says it talks about the blood.
Mm-hmm.
It says, and you are not to eat. This is 7:26, and you are not to eat any blood, either a bird or animal, in any of your dwellings. Any person who eats any blood, even that person shall be cut off from his people. Okay, so then we go to Deuteronomy 12:23.
Deuteronomic.
Yes, Deuteronomic. Yes. Okay.
Say 12:23.
12:23. Yes, it says, "Only be sure not to eat the blood, for the blood is the life. The blood is," and actually you could translate it as soul. Yeah,
it's literally soul.
The blood is the life, and you shall not eat the life with the flesh. You shall not eat it. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. You shall not eat it. That's 3 times he says that. In order that it may be well with you and your sons after you, for you will be doing what is right in the sight of the Lord.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I pulled up the Message version again. I was curious because, it literally is like, do not eat the blood. Don't eat the blood. Don't eat it. Pour it out. Don't eat it.
I love it. But
also, too, what's curious is before Jesus, right?
Yeah.
How did they make their sacrifices? They were blood sacrifices.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's no sacrifice without the blood. And
That's
but it all points to Jesus' blood, which is the only true blood, which is the only true life, which makes the only true sacrifice.
And even before Jesus, it was poured out on the altar. But these creatures, in the way we view vampirism, it's pulling the blood from something else into them.
Yeah.
Not pouring it out for God.
Yes. Okay, so one more little passage in Leviticus 17. It says in verse 10, "And any man from the house of Israel or from the aliens who sojourn among them who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood by reason of the life that makes atonement." Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's an interesting thing is in verse 10, he says, any person who eats blood, but actually that word person is the word soul. Mm-hmm. Any soul who eats blood. Okay, any spirit, soul,
Okay, we're getting deep.
So a vampire would have a soul?
Wait, well, a vampire would be a type of soul, spirit, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In other words, it's drawing in, by using the word soul there, it's drawing in a little bit of the spiritual element there.
So even a fallen spirit would fall into that category.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't see any reason why you would not not read it that way. Even in verse 12 where it says, "Therefore I said to the sons of Israel, no person among you, no soul among you may eat blood, nor may any alien who sojourns among you."
That proves that there's aliens.
There you go. Yeah, it says it right there, right there in my English Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he goes on For as for the life of all flesh, its blood is identified with its life.
That's what I was just reading.
Therefore I said to the sons of Israel, you are not to eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. Okay, so
I want to know how many times he says that.
Well, he says it, I don't know, but a lot. And, he's very adamant about it. And I think it speaks not only just about the symbolism of blood, that it's only to be used for one thing, but also because many of the neighboring cultures would be blood drinkers, if you will.
Yeah.
Flesh eaters and blood drinkers. And it's like, it's bad for you to go, sacrifice meat to another god, but it's really bad if you drink blood.
Right.
I guess super bad if you drink blood. And here's the other thing too, transitioning kind of back to more modern times. Michael Heiser on one of these podcasts said something very insightful. And they were talking about folklore and mythology. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about vampires.
Right.
It's all, yes, it does come from ancient roots. It probably has some demonic connection there, connected with the second heavenly rebellion and the whole thing like that.
Very loosely.
But when we get to modern times, it's all folklore, all mythology. Okay, so when we track the cultures with their vampirism, we get a little bit more advanced, a little more sophisticated when we get to the Greek and Roman cultures. They still have these creatures that, that drain life energy, blood, flesh, air, all that kind of thing. But this, it's out of the Roman Empire as civilization moves north into Europe and what we would know as kind of what becomes medieval Europe. And medieval times, they're spooky times.
Oh yeah.
And this is where a lot of this folklore originates. That's where the shape-shifting comes in. It comes in as it moves north from Rome up into Eastern and Western Europe.
Well, when did the Black Plague, was that medieval?
Yeah, for sure.
Right, that was the big one they said with the vampire stuff.
Yep.
And they talked about the shape-shifting, like some of them, they would think they could shape-shift into dogs.
Yep.
And see, that comes strictly from people connecting vampirism to demons. When Jesus cast out the demons and they flew into the pigs, that's where they got that from.
Yeah.
And then it become, and through myth and folklore over time.
And then, even as far back, you remember the Amalekites, who were, the legend was that they could turn themselves into animals, which is why God told them to destroy the livestock. Just get them buggers any way you can.
Just be done with this.
Exactly.
They were the first vampire hunters.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, those darned Amalekites. But there's some, as we got into the shape-shifting, then, that's where a lot of the popular myths and popular folklore start to spread, and you get the elves, and you get the fairies, and you get the, frogs that turn into princes, and all that kind of stuff.
I think my wife's an elf.
She could be.
She's like 4'11".
Well, Legolas was pretty tall.
Oh yeah. Forgot about him.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Do you get the movie reference?
No.
Lord of the Rings.
Man, what are we going to do with this guy?
I don't know.
You've heard of the movie.
Yeah, I have.
You know who Tolkien is.
Yes, I do. I absolutely do.
It was actually referenced a lot in the Haunted Cosmos
yes.
podcast.
Really?
Yeah, about vampires. It was. Yeah.
Well, okay.
Conversation come full circle.
That's it, all the way around.
We're giving a lot of shout outs to good podcasts for you guys.
Absolutely.
Almost as good as this podcast.
Yeah.
Almost.
We just recap all theirs.
Yes.
Exactly
you don't
right.
need theirs. Just
Michael Heiser's dead now. So
yes, he is. Yeah, so who cares? I know. No,
his website's amazing though. I went to it and all the documentation you can go through. You can spend a lifetime.
What's his website?
It is drmsh.com. drmichaelsheiser.com.
Yeah. I mean, there's literally just research and
He
research.
has on his website, he has a button you can push to show all of his references, and it goes on for like 39 pages.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, and you can actually click on them and read the articles that he took it from. I mean, he's like obsessive.
See,
about
fringe history.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh man, ancient astronauts. Oh,
Yeah, he's got all kinds of stuff on there, man.
It's amazing.
Oh, paranormal. Yeah. All
And
right.
he was an incredible scholar, just straight up. You listen to some of his just Bible exegesis. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Anyway, so sort of underpinning all of this witchcraft or this folklore is witchcraft.
Yeah.
It's like widespread umbrella of witchcraft. So all of these vampires and werewolves and ghouls and ghosts and all these different kinds of things. And so we got shapeshifters. We got, and this is okay. So this is also where Vlad the Impaler comes in. So what do you guys know about Vlad the Impaler?
Vlad Tempest, Vlad the Third, Vlad Dracul. Depends on what you want to call him. This guy was twisted. I mean, he went from the Holy Roman Empire side to the Ottoman Empire side and back and forth. They both wanted to kill him. Someone actually succeeded in it. He was very vicious, suspicious nut.
So he was like a mercenary warrior.
Yeah, he impaled over 100,000 people.
Well, if your nickname is Impaler, then
it was nuts.
Yeah,
But he didn't leave like a lot of, like, he was like, I'm going to make sure there's no doubt about it. I'm the Impaler.
Yeah.
I'm gonna double impale them.
Yeah. Because he had his fence. They claimed on his fence out there he would have people impaled on it.
Yeah,
Really?
women, children, men, it didn't matter.
Which that is where they, Dracula
That's where the wooden stake
with
comes in.
not the 95 or 94 Dracula that came out, that it kind of shows kind of in the background. You can see some of the fence. Looks like there's kind of like bodies on it. So they definitely referenced it a lot.
Okay.
But he would drink blood. He would drink the blood of them. And I don't remember if he would eat the flesh. I don't remember if he would go that
from
far.
what I understood, he would dip. He would have a bowl of blood on his dining table, and he would dip bread in it.
So he had some standards. He was like, I won't stoop that low.
But see, like when we think of impaling people, right? This isn't just running them through. He would insert a spigot in them and stand them up, and their body weight would pull down on it.
Yeah.
And then they would be up for display. Like this was like one of the most brutal forms of war you would ever see.
Yeah.
And it was yard decor for this guy.
Yeah, and the guy's name is Dracul, and depending on which language, it's dragon or demon. Dragon or devil. I mean,
so do you think Vlad the Impaler was demon possessed?
Oh, I don't know about possessed, but he was definitely demon influenced.
He was certainly led by the demonic spirit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I almost feel like a guy to go to that extreme, he might just be straight up demonically possessed.
And I would venture to say that anybody throughout history we see like this, that goes through genocide and murders people,
like Adolf.
There's definitely something demonic there.
Yeah. I can't see it any other way.
Because that's not human nature.
No.
Well, that's something we've even talked about in past episodes. It's actually kind of somewhat helped me rationalize some just horrific things, like when we see these mass shootings and you're like, how can this happen? Like, how can this person be so freaking messed up? And it's like, well, they have obviously demonic influence over their life.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people get offended by that because
they watch too many vampire movies.
Yeah. That's right. That's
played around with that Ouija board.
Yeah, shouldn't have been watching The Conjuring.
A lot of people get
Casper.
They get offended because it's like, well, church people do jacked up stuff too, and all these other things. And yes, I get it. But a normal human being doesn't commit these things.
No.
Doesn't do these things.
No, there is a moral standard, whether you choose to agree with it or not, but there is an absolute moral standard that we know certain things are right and certain things are wrong.
And here's a question I have for you guys. Do y'all think that the things that happen in the world today are happening more often? Or do you think we're so connected more?
That's a big
that
question.
It's becoming public information more.
Benjamin Franklin said that the downfall of modern civilization is the printing press. Mm-hmm. Because now I have to care about something that I got no business caring about.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what's happening in, Yugoslavia right now is none of my business.
Right.
Yeah.
I should not have to know about that, let alone care about that. But now I have to.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to lightning speeds.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It could be that we just know about it more.
Well, like these are things that just pop through my head, like Amber Alerts, right? When children are missing, like how many Amber Alerts do we get? And they come through all the time. And these are the ones that are just reported.
I know.
They're very few times are they reported.
It feels like it's happening a lot more.
Right.
Let's just put it that way. It just feels like it is.
And so I'm wondering if that's a wake up call for us, or is it actually becoming more prevalent, or both, or neither. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely something we should be looking into.
And I do know that there is a spiritual warfare element to the whole thing.
And I wonder if 100 years from now, they're going to fictionalize these type things and make folklore and myth about it.
I don't know. So you guys are saying that that a lot of this, stake through the heart, all that kind of thing, came out of Vlad the Impaler and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of the folklore did.
Okay.
Well, and it was, and again, it kind of said, really, you mentioned the two, how'd you say his name? Polidori and Stoker were really the two that made it what we know today. Mm-hmm. It's really Stoker. He was mad popular. Yes, and
for sure.
And see, in his book, I'm pretty sure when it came out, they were talking about it has never been off the shelf since then.
Wow.
And here's another thing to look at too. If we're just going to go straight Hollywood, right? In every iteration of Dracula, he became a vampire through the one mysterious vampire out in the wilderness.
Okay.
Every iteration, somehow he had this devil at the crossroads experience and became the first vampire.
And he's a werewolf in Dracula. Because there was it's not often that you see him depicted as a werewolf, but there is a scene when he takes a woman and somebody witnesses him and he's in like a werewolf form. And so they're like, what? But obviously a little startled. But that one's interesting. It kind of ties in the whole, because most of your vampires, they're like bats if they transform. Yeah. And he can do the bat thing, but he can also be a straight up werewolf. So he's just full blown shapeshifter.
Yeah, yeah. So what are the ways that you can actually kill a vampire?
Stake through the heart, behead them.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Silver.
So sometimes you just do both just to make sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought you had to do both. I didn't think just
the
cut
way
your head
I
off
killed
would
them.
work.
I've killed a lot of vampires, and I just changed the channel.
Yes, that's
and
true.
They
go away. Yeah.
I thought you couldn't just cut their head off.
No, from what I understood, if I'm remembering my movies right, you can cut their head off. You can stake them through the heart. Holy water, garlic, in some movies.
But I think
poor casting choice.
Yeah,
that usually does
true.
it too.
But there are ways to actually kill them, but then there are also ways to sort of deter them.
Mm-hmm. See, the holy water, the crucifix, garlic are all deterrents.
Yeah, they just keep them away for a while.
You just said something, Peter, that it just triggered a memory in my head.
What?
So there's a way to deter them. They cannot come in your house unless you invite them.
Oh, wow.
Think about that.
Here's another way that they said you can deter a vampire, because they say that you could throw seed all over the ground because they have to obsessively count it.
Huh. I thought that was a leprechaun thing.
I thought that was, Count Dracula from Sesame Street. I know, but apparently you would throw barley, all over the place, and they have to count it all before they can come after you again. Apparently.
I wonder how many people back then had
carried
just
a
barley.
pocket of barley.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And a garlic around the neck. Yeah.
Well, so I was thinking about this actually today, thinking in preparation for this, because this really got my brain kind of turning a little bit. I was like, all right, so the vampires, they got to drink blood to sustain their undead life.
Yeah, right.
But
parasites.
And so I'm like, all right, but then the way you kill them, stake through the heart, whatever. But then I'm like, well, if they just don't drink any blood, then they would just die. So if you could somehow keep them from just getting everybody's blood, would they not just die?
I would assume that. That's what I always assumed.
Yeah.
I don't again, it depends on what movie you watch, because
That's true.
I remember Dracula 2000, right? Like they had Dracula in this silver casket with this crucifix helmet on with leeches on him, sucking any tiny little drop of blood out of him. But then I got to thinking about it today on the way over here. Like I just went so far down this rabbit hole. I'm like, how long do parasites last without blood? Like, because I don't know.
I don't know.
Because like I've heard like bed bugs, they're parasites. They can live for like 6 months without a drop.
Oh, don't scare me like that.
So
But
like
I'm but like, I feel like, so do they ever die though if they don't get blood? Because
maybe they just go into hibernation.
Maybe, because I'm going back now to my interview with the vampire with Lestat, and now he starts drinking the blood of rats. I would ask if you've seen it, but I know you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen that.
Now we know the secret to Tom Cruise's youthful appearance all the time.
He's a vampire.
There you go.
Lestat. So I don't know, but I did get to thinking, I'm like, well, really, if you just starved them, they would die.
I don't know. They didn't talk about that.
They didn't. And I've never seen a movie address that.
No, and I didn't, in the journals that I read, I didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't say it in Isaiah.
Yeah. Or the message, version of it.
But that's something that's really messing with me. We were talking about vampire deterrent, and they cannot come in your house unless they're invited. And I would say that's true with anything demonic.
Boy, that is true. And this brings me back to this thing that they were talking about, that Michael Heiser said. He said it's all folklore and mythology, but all folklore and mythology is always retelling something.
Yeah.
It's reframing something that's actually true. So even though elves and fairies and vampires and all this stuff are not like physically real, they're attached to something.
Yeah, it's one drop of truth in a 10-gallon bucket of fiction.
Even in mythology, think, mythology is all made up, and it largely is.
Yeah.
Some of the bizarre mythology stories are just like, really, but they're retelling something. All the creation narratives and the flood narratives, they're all different somehow, but they're still all going back to the fact that there was a flood and there was a creation. And so it's the same exact concept here with vampires. And as we move on through this month, we'll get into these other I don't know if we'll get to zombies or something like that, whatever we decide to come up with.
Any of it's on the board with me, man.
But it's funny though, just from the modern side of it, is we went from vampire movies being horror films to now, like I said,
that's the thing,
they're romanticized now. Like it's sexy to be a vampire, or it's hip, or they sparkle when they get in the sunshine or something. Like it's weird. Like it's becoming, I don't know, lighthearted. Right, I guess you would like your vampire buddy, I guess you would say, or your vampire lover, or it's really weird, man.
So
like you see these celebrities that wear their significant other's blood around their neck.
That's really weird.
Like Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton did that.
I could see they probably drink each other's blood.
Look how far I got them.
Right.
Yeah. that is weird. Okay, so but let's peel back and take a look at the larger picture. So now here is something that is inherently evil. We know it has evil roots that has always in history been portrayed as something terrifying and evil. And now it's being elevated as something cool and good. And now over here, we've got Jesus, who has always been sort of portrayed as the ideal and good and wonderful. And now society is like, put Jesus down in the damaging section. If you tell people about Jesus, you're damaging them, It reminds me of a verse in Isaiah that says, woe to them who call good evil and evil good.
Yep.
It's like, wow. Maybe that kind of gives us a clue as to why we're talking about some of this crazy stuff that's going on in the world.
Because, we definitely, would you say a horror movie has more attendance than the local church? On a global scale.
I don't have research data to say that, but anecdotally, I would say probably does.
So, right?
That you can fill up a theater for, like 3 weeks straight at least, to capacity.
Yeah.
And Oh, by the way, speaking of weird stuff, the tent that was down there,
Yeah.
You said it's gone, didn't you?
it's gone. Yeah. And a friend of mine actually went to the tent and went inside, and there was a guy up there preaching and stuff like that, but there was only like about 20 people there.
Huh.
Yeah.
With all those chairs.
Uh-huh.
So did it just not, do you think they were like, this ain't taking off?
They didn't get any
packed up and
traction or
rolled out?
something.
Oh, that scares me then. If there was only 20 people there, maybe he was preaching truth.
Nah, probably not. I just found that to be fascinating.
Yeah.
That is.
I have yet to run into anybody who
Was there?
has made a big deal about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like most people I talked to didn't even know that
I
was
never
there.
saw it.
I know. It's crazy.
Well,
Maybe it wasn't real.
It might not. Yeah. Well, I feel like for next week, you have to watch a vampire movie before. I mean, I feel like you need to watch one.
Okay, so which one should I watch?
I'm thinking of a lighthearted one for you. Like, I'm thinking The Lost Boys,
Lost
is
Boys,
a really
yeah.
good.
Okay.
It's not scary.
Okay.
It's Kiefer Sutherland, man.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
a great movie.
Yeah.
It's,
So
it's very 80s.
so not Twilight.
No.
Twilight that one just offends me. So, did you get my Lost Boys reference in the GIF that I sent in their text group?
I had somebody interpret that for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I had it explained to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, because
Lost Boys is like my childhood.
Okay.
I love the Lost Boys,
Yeah.
and it has a very 80s.
It's
but
the Goonies of vampire movies.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, that's
Fright Night's good, but again, man, it's funny. Like, it's weird. I don't when it comes to vampires, I love vampires.
Yeah.
Like, I've always one of the first books I think I told you, like, I've read Dracula 4 times.
Well, it's a very well written novel.
It
from
is.
what I'm told.
It is, and I listen to it now. I've read it physically, and then I'll go periodically. I'll be like, I'm a creature of habit. So like, I'll go to my audiobooks. I'll listen to Dracula again, and I just love the whole story. It's a very epic tale.
Yeah.
And because they have the battle scene like at the end of Van Helsing and Jonathan and all them, but then Salem's Lot was one of the first ones I read. Have you read that one?
Yeah.
Man, that one is really good. Stephen King wrote it, and that one probably sparked my interest in vampires even more. Like, that book, I remember actually reading that book, and I would be creeped out going to bed.
Stephen King's
And
books are way better than the movies.
they are. I never saw the movie Salem's Lot, but I didn't hear a lot of good about it. But I don't know what it is about, like, in vampires, they for me, they are like this, they have this strength. Like, they're very strong, but it is cool to see the difference in them, because some films depict them. Some vampires can go in the sunlight, per the film. And then you got some where the dude's just, like, I was trying to think, in Dracula, I don't know that he had to be invited in. Like, I'm thinking Dracula could just go up wherever he wanted to.
Yeah.
So, but then, like, Fright Night, he had to be invited in, and Lost Boys, he had to be invited in. So it's interesting, the different takes.
And then Lost Boys, if you invite them in, it renders you powerless.
Wow. So to kind of, sum all this up, it's interesting as long as you sort of keep it in the realm of fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
for sure. For sure.
And just, interesting sort of kinds of stories that, like almost like you would read a science fiction novel or, something like that.
It's quite literally what we've done tonight is we've taken this fiction pie, right? And we've just threw the pie out and got to the crust, to the pan.
Yeah.
Like, where did this start to form?
Yeah.
Like, right.
Well, and it helps us, honestly, from a Christian perspective. It helps us to know, what the history is behind it.
Yeah.
It helps us to know, how the thread of that history kind of creeps its way into the Bible. Mm-hmm. Not that the Bible uses it in a positive way or anything. It's really just demonstrating to us that there was a sensibility then, that they knew about it.
And you learned something. I bet you didn't know it said night monsters in Isaiah.
Or hairy goats.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you should learn that if you actually encounter a real life vampire, it's probably a demon, and you need to get the crap out of it.
Exactly right. There is nothing glamorous about real vampires.
And I would say anything supernatural that you encounter is probably demonic.
Well, and here's, you know, I'm going to paraphrase this verse because I don't have it memorized, but I actually quoted this in
I thought you had the whole Bible.
Well, yes, of course I do. I'm just trying to figure out which translation to use.
He's got so much in there.
Yeah,
I need to hear the message. The spewing garbage.
But you know, it says, you know, whatever is pure, whatever is true, whatever is good, honorable, worthy of praise, all those, you know, he lists all this. He says, dwell on these things.
Yeah.
So what it means there is not that you can't enjoy secular entertainment,
right,
or, you know, that I read this saw this cartoon, and it was funny because these people were out having a really good time, like at a restaurant or something like that, and God's outside the window saying, "I'm really mad because you're not thinking about me right now," you know. and it's like, that's not what God does.
Right.
Yeah. He expects us to live and move and enjoy this world and each other, and, you know, that includes all kinds of pursuits. But where do you come home to? Where do you live?
That's right.
Where does your heart reside?
Yeah. Where do you lay your head at night?
And you know, in the same breath, Paul will say, you know, hey, if it bothers you to eat meat you sacrifice to idols, don't do it.
Right.
But if it doesn't bother you, then it's okay. If it bothers your friend, then don't do it. But if it doesn't, you know, it's like he's okay on that end. But then he comes back and says, but whatever's true, whatever's good, whatever's pure.
Yep.
And so, you know, it's totally okay for us to talk about vampires and where they come from, just like it's okay for us to talk about demons and you know, demonic possessions and you know, it's funny because one sort of clear thread that runs through all of this history is this phrase, unclean spirits. They're called unclean spirits in some of these ancient writings. And what did Jesus cast out?
Unclean spirits.
And you know, something else too that I just thought about too. I think it's very important that we talk about all this fictional stuff, because a lot of people will read about demons in scripture and they see the fiction side of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They see the devil with the pitchfork running around in every corner wearing a Metallica t-shirt. You know, and it's like, calm down. Let's separate fiction from.
And it's just like C.S. Lewis said, as have others. The biggest mistakes we make when it comes to spiritual warfare and demons and vampires and ghosts and everything else is to take it too lightly
or too seriously.
That's
right.
We have to hold it very loosely in the middle because, you know, he got it in one of these videos. He got into talking about ghosts, you know, and he says, you know, I believe that ghosts probably are demonic, you know, but they're, you know, and you could say, okay, so there's some confusing things about ghosts. So like, why do ghosts only go into the kitchen? Why do they only, you know, why do they limit themselves? They supposedly can go through walls and everything, but they're always in the kitchen, you know?
Yeah.
So there's probably some, you know, I don't know. It's probably not as prevalent as some make it out to be, but he says, I also have a friend, this couple who they have one room in their house that they don't go into because it's always cold in there, no matter what they do. And there's always, you know, kind of weird stuff, and they just don't go. So there's some reality to it, but and there is a danger to it if you play around with it and treat it too lightly and become obsessed with it. And
for sure,
all this kind of stuff.
We saw Saul summon Samuel.
That was his downfall.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like so, Scripture does address these things
to a medium.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, like, again, there is truth to these things.
Yeah. There absolutely is.
That truth is not found in Hollywood, but there is some truth.
So true. So, you know, is it just a sin to watch Casper the Friendly Ghost or Buffy the Vampire Slayer or even Dracula or all those things? No, it's not at all. You have to keep the whole thing in its proper perspective.
That's it.
And don't intentionally go to the line, and don't intentionally play around with fire. Don't intentionally.
So can you attend a haunted, like if someone was like, we're going to have a haunted prison tour, there's like Alcatraz, they're going to have you, could you attend that?
I would not, because I would have to bring a change of underwear. Is what I would.
Well,
have
see,
to
that's
do.
what like that's what I got a good buddy that lives in I guess in Idaho, and they do this haunted prison tour, and he's like, man, I'm gonna get you and another buddy. We're gonna come out. We're gonna do this haunted prison tour, and I'm like, this sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So like, my question, I guess, is that, are you inviting a spirit, or are you potentially opening yourself up to that?
I'm gonna give you the spiritual answer. I'm saved. So
Well, I mean, I think the correct answer is for you, probably not.
Yeah.
It's probably no big deal.
Yeah.
for somebody, it
Yeah.
could be.
For somebody who could be triggered by that,
Yeah.
or has had a past, or is maybe very spiritually weak.
Yeah.
I think you just have to be wise about it.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the same thing too about drinking, right?
Yeah.
So many people have these issues with drinking. Whether it's a sin to drink, not all that other things, I don't know. But how about this? Is it a sin to drink in front of your friend that's a recovering alcoholic?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
absolutely.
And I think that's the
And
mindset.
all these things that we have been, sort of eternally legalistic about. you
Right.
know. I mean, I came from a very legalistic background. Christians don't go to movies. Just don't go to any movies.
So that's why you haven't seen so many movies.
The first movie I ever went to was when I was 10 years old.
Was it The Exorcist?
No, it was not. It was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So,
I just listened to that song today.
so it was a racially
Rush?
charged movie. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. That is a good. Yeah,
I was just jamming Rush.
yeah. And we weren't allowed to have secular music in our house.
How did you learn to get so good then?
Well, we had secular music in our house.
You cheated.
Yeah, exactly. I sinned against my mother and father.
So could you watch any movies? Like before, like could you watch, did it have to be like godly films?
Oh yeah, well, first off, when I was growing up, we lived in the mountains,
Yeah.
and so we barely had electricity.
Gosh,
We had
so you weren't worried about TV.
no television. Our telephone was a party line,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so we read books and we listened to records on our turntable.
Yeah.
So, and I remember getting really freaked out listening to Snow White because logs were turning into alligators. It's like I was freaked out. And my parents were not, like super fundamentalist legalistic,
Right.
Yeah.
especially later on. But many of our friends were,
Yeah.
So, the girls always had to wear dresses and they always had to be below the knee. And
You lived in the Footloose town.
Yep.
And
No dancing.
makeup was a sin. That was,
Wow.
do not wear makeup.
Well, at least there was no surprises.
No, not at all.
You knew what you were
exactly
getting.
what you were getting.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And of course, pop culture and all these different kinds of things. Dancing was like, not cool.
Peter drove across the tracks and threw on a prom.
Yeah,
He
pretty
did.
much. Yeah.
He had a yellow beetle.
Well, my brother and I started playing music when we were, we all took piano lessons from the age of 4. So all
So,
5
yeah,
kids.
y'all were young, right?
And so then I kept on with piano and he gravitated toward guitar.
Smart
and then
man.
By the time we were, 13, 14 years old, we had our own Christian rock band. That
Yeah.
was like a big thing, And then when I was 17 and he was 18, we started playing nightclubs. And that was, it was all out the window at that point. I was breaking every rule.
I was gonna say, he's just stepping foot in
Yeah.
that place.
Peter had them purple shoes on every night.
Absolutely. And so a lot of those things that we demonized, smoking, drinking, cussing, all this stuff, we find out as we grow and as we mature that God is less concerned about that and more concerned about our hearts, where our hearts dwell. And we honestly trust God, first of all, to protect us and to go with us and to give us wisdom in everything that we do. But also we trust God to convict us of the things that need to go away from us, because there are lots of things that I used to do and I was like, I'm a Christian still. And God shows you over time that those things, Paul says, everything is available to me, but not everything is profitable.
Right. Yeah.
And God shows you what's profitable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he just has a way of growing you in that way.
So I want to share a story, get y'all's take on it here before we before we end. I feel like this is fitting because we're into the Halloween month here.
Yeah.
So my same buddy that I was telling y'all about with the prison thing, he worked, and he's shared the story actually on another podcast. He worked as a prison guard for a little while, and they were at a like maximum security prison. Well, they built a new, I mean, for lack of a better word, kill house where they do their executions.
Right on.
And he was on the like graveyard shift of patrol. And he said they had this new one. They had like, I think they had just executed maybe some of the, I don't remember how many people, but it was a very small amount. Like this new kill house had just been used.
Wow.
And he said when he would patrol, you know, I can thankfully say I've never been to prison, so I don't know exactly the layout here, but when he goes to walk out, apparently it's like a big yard. He has to walk a long ways, and the kill house was kind of off away a little bit. Well, he said it's like 2 a.m. or something. And he's walking out there and he's by himself. He would always make his rounds. And he said that the light is on in the kill house. And he said that the light's not supposed to be on. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. So he said he goes in there and he opens the door's unlocked, and he turns the lights off. And I guess I describing the way he was, I guess he had to walk in, he kind of turns the lights off. Well, when he's walking out, the water turns on. And so, and I mean, this dude is not like, I can legitimately say he's not blowing smoke. Like he is telling the truth. The water turns on. And so he goes and he turns the water off, and then the lights come on, and he said the water turns on again. And he said, so I just got up and he said, I just walked out, locked the door, and radioed, building's clear. And he said, he said, I never went back in that building.
I would break Usain Bolt's record for the sprints and the hurdles and the 200-yard dash.
Yeah.
I would be moving so fast you would never see an old man run this fast.
We would do these night patrols in Afghanistan.
Well, but what do you think? I want to know what you think.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of obvious. Something's going on and I don't want to be around it. That's what I think.
I agree with Peter on this one. You start having inanimate objects move, I'm out.
Yeah, like how do you explain? And then like you got to turn the water on. Like somebody could argue like, all right, maybe the lights are shorting out. Now, unless you walk over there and the switch is flipped up, and then it's like, man, I guess somebody'd still be like, well, it's just the tension's wrong and it's flipping up. But like, you ain't like water ain't just turning on.
No.
So like, how do you, that's what I'm like,
and then you put them
that
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. You don't. There's only one way to explain that.
It's got to be.
I've seen the Amityville Horror. Get out.
Yeah.
You know,
so now, what were you saying on the night patrol?
In Afghanistan, we would do these night patrols, and they're lights out patrols. Like you do what's called blackout patrols. You're driving with night vision goggles. It's all infrared, right? And so we would stop on the side of the road, and it'd just be dead silent. And you know, you got mountains all around you, and nothing. You can't see anything. It's pitch black. And the guy in my truck, guy named Sergeant Cruz, right, and my buddy Garcia. They did not do horror stuff at all, and I'm just sitting there goading them. Right, I'm like, man, what are you gonna do if a demon just like right there in front of your windshield? And you're like, shut up, spray. Like, and I think that was probably part of my love for horror films. Is I love seeing other people get scared. You know? Things like that. But I can honestly say, some of those patrols, I was freaked out because it's dead silent, and you hear these sounds.
Night monsters.
That's the best way to explain it, because I'm like, I know what a goat sounds like. That's not a goat. You know, I know what and the donkey sound like. That's not a donkey. I don't know what that is. You know, I didn't go check.
No.
You know, so
I ain't patrolling over there. But okay, so to kind of put a bow on all this, we discussed something before we hit record, and it was that all of this stuff, this folklore, this witchcraft mythology, it is, and especially the vampires are not the Antichrist, very Antichrist. Because here we have a creature that drains blood to sustain itself from somebody else.
When Christ came,
and Christ gave his blood willingly.
I was trying to remember if we talked about that off air or
it was
air.
before we hit it. And so I think that all of this we have to start there. We have to keep that in mind. That's got to be like our compass, our North Star. And so you know, God wants us to experience enjoyment, and if being scared out of your wits is enjoyable, then go for it, man.
Right.
Go through your haunted house.
Yeah, I would say to a degree, everyone enjoys it a little bit. Like, let's say if it's sports, right? Let's say Mariners are playing at 6-6, bottom of the ninth.
Yeah, that's a horror film.
You know, but let's say, you know, it's a tied game, bottom of the ninth, you know, and it comes down to this one pitch.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're tense.
Adrenaline.
And,
the whole
and you know,
thing. For sure. Yeah. And it all kind of comes to the same category. But also, we have to remember that, you know, especially like with kids and young people, you know, nothing's, you know, their psyche hasn't fully developed yet, things like that. And so we have to be wise about that too. There's certain things that I would not let my kids do when they were 11 and 12 years old, because it just would not be good for them.
Yeah. If we have Hocus Pocus on, it's okay for my kid to see it. Yeah. But when I'm like start breaking out what I call the big guns, you know, like when when like the Exorcist is on, I'm like, she will never sleep again for 10 years.
I gotta tell on myself for just a second. So Levi will stay up, and he's like me, man. He can power through a movie. It could be super late. Like, I could probably go wake him up right now, take him to the living room, turn a movie on. He'd probably stay awake and watch the whole movie. And you know, poor parenting choice on my part. He was like 3, and I love horror films. Yeah. And I love the campy Friday the 13th.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And so now there's some parts in there, like I would cover his eyes because there's some things he didn't need to see, but he watched some of Friday the 13th with me. And there's this page called The Merkins on YouTube, and they do parodies through it, but it's like Every Breath You Take, but they've done a parody with Jason Voorhees, and it's like Every Life I Take, and they're actually really well done. And so I would play those sometimes because they're funny. And he thinks, so he's like, man, let's watch Jason. And so like then he had a nightmare, and my wife's like, I don't think that he needs to be watching that. I'm like, it's probably not a good idea. And so now I only let him watch like one of them. But yeah, that was. And
then you had to do intercessory prayer on his.
I did on his night terrors. That's what somebody's like. There it is.
It's funny because like Jay likes horror movies too, and so like this past week we were sitting there. I don't even remember which one we were watching. We were watching one, and then you can hear Peyton coming down the hallway. So we're like, pause that sucker.
Yeah,
you know, turn it off. We'll change it. You know, and then she's like, oh, I'm gonna go outside and play, and then we gotta. All clear. Okay, cool. You know, because like some things, you know, kids, like you just said, they're underdeveloped. They don't need to.
No. Well, and that's like Friday the 13th isn't even scary to me.
Right.
You know, I'm like, it's kind of campy, funny. Yeah. But again, to a 3-year-old, a big dude with I got a mask over there of it. With the machete, it's probably a little startling.
Yeah. And just like I wouldn't let them watch, you know, graphic war movies and stuff like that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same category. Yeah. They're just not there yet.
They're not ready. Yeah.
But anyway. So wrapping it all up, whatever is true, whatever is good, lovely, pure, honorable, worthy of praise, that's where you live.
That's right.
Yep.
That's where you live. And Jesus is Lord of all, even the vampires.
That's it.
There you go. So
I will say this though too. We were talking about this off air. Lilith, and the Babylonians, they the 4 living creatures from Ezekiel.
Yeah.
They represent the 4 astrological corners of the Babylonian Empire, and God is Lord above the 4 living creatures. Yeah. So that was literally Ezekiel's way of going, God's even God over your Elohim.
That's right. Over your mythology, over your folklore, over your witchcraft. God is supreme over all. That's right. it. And that's a good way to end.
That is.
Wrap us up.
All right, guys. Y'all know what to do. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And actually, hey, for the month of October, if somebody's listening, and if you got a creepy story, I'd love for you to write it in. Man, we might share your creepy story on air.
You can write it in. You can put it in the comments. You know, just all kinds of different.
Send it in. Yeah, I mean, if I'm sure I was gonna say there may be a way to anonymously if they're like embarrassed.
Yes,
I don't
sign out of YouTube and then just write in, and it'll be anonymous.
Okay, well there you go. Yeah, write it in. I think that'd be kind of cool. Share some
I'm
creepy
open
stories
for all suggestions.
Yeah.
All right,
and we sharing creepy stories in Jesus' name.
That's right. And we'll be looking forward to hearing Brother Peter's review of the Lost Boys in the next episode.
We'll see.
Yeah, we're gonna get weird. We'll keep going down this.
I might be doing holy things like working on my sermon.
All right, guys. Thank y'all.
See you.